I am the Director of Sustainability for Henry Ford Health System, just down the road here, so glad you all are here for this. I just kind of wanted to echo the last speaker and pose the question as well. In one of the takeaways, we talked about jobs, 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 and I know there's always a focus when looking at infrastructure on the immediate jobs of building the infrastructure, and oftentimes the public conversation is around building the infrastructure and the jobs that are created from that. But how do we do a better job of quantifying the jobs of what good infrastructure creates in terms of attracting businesses to the region, to the state? We're well known for our environment and protecting and wanting to protect that. So how does having good infrastructure with things like they were doing in Washington, D.C. with building, green infrastructure to support stormwater versus investing in that, how do we quantify that? And then how do we also, as we're doing the equation, because I struggle this right now with our own building our sustainability program at Henry Ford, how do we put value on the impact on people, on in our case, it's employee engagement, but how do we value the citizen engagement and the fact that they're happier, as you mentioned before, the social benefits of the infrastructure as well?
I'll jump in because I'm not shy. On the jobs front, I'll just point to it. We're sitting surrounded by academics, so I mean, I leave it to you to do the rigorous study to tell what's going to happen in the region. But at the national scale, at least from the energy department, we did a quadrennial energy review that did produce what would happen if we invested fully in our energy infrastructure for transmission and distribution. It was something to like 1.5 million jobs would be the end result. But I leave that to the smarter folks in the room. But to your other point on sort of equity, inclusion, and engagement of employees, I'm so glad you brought that up, because as I sit in this room, there is a well-known saying here, I think, in Detroit. Maurice Cox, who's a city planner, often will say, if it's not with us, it's not about us. And so as we think about engagement in Detroit, please keep that in mind. This is a very white room, and we're not in a very white city. So I'm pivoting now to talk about one of the things I did support when I was in service called the Smart Cities Challenge. The city of Detroit did apply for it. It was a Department of Transportation opportunity, predated the Amazon HQ2 opportunity. Similar bruises, however. Smart Cities Challenge, I thought, at least for this conversation, was important to bring up. It was a $50 million opportunity that one city would get. And of course, as much as it pains me, Columbus, Ohio got that money. But the reason they received that big pile of cash was because the question was, if we give you a bag of money, how will you use it how will you use mobility to affect change in society? And Columbus answered the question and said, we have an insane infant mortality problem. We're going to solve that through mobility dollars. We're like, that's a really good use of money. Here you go. The most interesting part about that investment is it brought about $500 million off the sidelines from private sector investment. So to your point about figuring out this investment, the leverage there is huge, and the outcomes for, kids and moms is pretty important too. So off the soapbox now.
To specifically try to get to your question, how do we measure it? We're trying to standardize some of these intangible, values, if you will. The ESG space, environmental, social, and governance space, which I'm sure you're very familiar with, is trying to standardize this now through I forgot what the foundation is in San Francisco now. Sustainable Accounting Development Board. So they're trying to standardize how you actually ask that question. How do you find out that information? The other one that many investors are starting, so corporations are using that. The way investors are starting to look at the SDGs, so the Sustainable Development Goals that are more broadly defined by the UN. And that, of course, reaches across, rich and poor. And there's probably some information we can get out of that. So with very specific questions, very specific weights and quantifiers affiliated with that. So that might be something to take a look at. And I don't think that's ever been permeated inside a community to do that. That's a very good question, figuring out how to do that.
So I'm an engineer, so I deal in data and results. And so we have to be in this for the long haul. Short-term measures won't tell us where you're going. You have to look long-term. The competitive advantage for Michigan is the quality of life here. We all use it. When we recruit people to the universities, when we recruit people to companies, we use the quality of life as the reason someone wants to move their family here. And so long-term, we have to keep playing on that. We got to keep showing that the infrastructure improvement in Michigan leads to a quality of life that makes a competitive advantage for Michigan, particularly over the West Coast and East Coast, because that's who the competitors are in a technology environment. And there's no reason that Michigan cannot lead in technology. We've got all the pieces and parts, but we have to show that the quality of life here is so much better. And I think it's a compelling case.
We have, if there is one more question, a brief one, we can take it.
It's not the question,
Okay.
Mike, it's the answer, Mike.
My name is John Norton. I'm the Director of Energy Research and Innovation for the Great Lakes Water Authority. Peter was on my doctoral committee, so if I sound belaborous, there's the reason.
You just won Jeopardy. You did.
And Jerry Lynch was also on my doctoral committee as well. There's something, when I've been at about a half a dozen of these. We're funding about $1.5 million worth of research a year. Very applied, very applied, very applied. And then a few actual fundamental pieces with Wayne State regarding PFAS. But here's something I want to talk about. When I wander about our facilities, so earlier today I was at the largest wastewater treatment plant in the world, and that's kind of cool, actually. I brag about that. I got married last week, and we toured the one on Mackinac Island, because that's what you do with your wife. But and a lot of the universities, when they have these meetings, there's infrastructure and there's innovation, and those are cool. I'm an engineer too, but here's what a fundamental need is. And this fundamental need is something that the people that finance this stuff can deal with, and it's not more research. I have a PhD, I've written papers. I'm telling you, that's not what we need. When I go around the water treatment plants and our wastewater treatment plant, we need the vocations. We need the trades. And so right now, I'm working with our department, we call it OD, Organizational Development. It's our HR group, to help figure out how we can train our employees better. That's where some of my research money is going to be going next year. And it just was a sudden smack in the face to realize, after going into the schools, the high schools, which I do quite a lot with my wife now, who's a professor at Illinois, these kids aren't getting shop or electronics. And, well, what do we need to keep Waterworks Park running and the Rouge River wastewater treatment plant running and all that? We need water treatment operators, but we need a hell of a lot of people with hands-on skills in electronics, plumbing. I'm a director. Our top master electricians and our top master plumbers earn more than I do. They're putting a lot of overtime keeping those water plants going when they have trip breaks and whatnot. They're earning good six-figure coin. Let's go around Detroit and see how many people would find that interesting. Hey, I talk to people. Are you going to college? You in college? You thinking of going back? Well, how do I tell them? How do I give this to them? Hey, are you in the trades? So a guy served me lunch a couple of days ago, and I said, hey, you thought of going to college? Oh, I got there. Degree in economics. He's serving me salad. I'm trying to get some relevance there. We need the trades. We need the hands-on skills. And that, when I go around and say, what research do you need? What do you got going there? There's things we're doing, trust me, to make sure Flint never happens again. And by the way, our water that we're delivering is awesome. But we need, the number one thing that they tell me is they need trained, skilled trades. There you go. It's not a question.
Okay.
So with that, we are going to wrap it up.